Capricorn. Welcome to your February 2021 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So if you listen or watch astrologers on YouTube, you may have heard some of them talking about how extraordinary it is to have so much Aquarius energy at one time, and unprecedented. And I don't profess to know the last time, and I didn't even remember what they said, but apparently it's been it's kind of a rare occurrence to have that happen. And the thing about the sign of Aquarius is that it's really about the collective. So I think of it also as the sign where all the energy is located. And of course, Pluto, which is in your sign right now, is going to go into Aquarius in a couple of years. So Pluto is going to join that party. Now that will be for the outer planets, or the planets that are not personal to all of us. But Jupiter will only be in Aquarius in 2021. It will be in Pisces, actually a couple of times in 2021, but going into 2022 for sure, full time. And yet at this very moment, as the month of February begins, we're going to have the sun there. Mercury is retrograding in there. Now, this is your second house of earned income, so a lot of activity with that area. And before I continue, this is a general forecast for Capricorn Sun and Capricorn Rising. General meaning that the dates that I give you may not link up with your particular natal or solar chart. That is dependent on your degree of Sun or Rising. So on the first of the month, Venus goes into Aquarius. And Aquarius is that second house of earned income for you, and Venus is the ruler of the second house. So it's a match made in heaven. It's like a double Venusian influence, and that whenever you see, the planet go into its ruling house, it's, it belongs there, but you have to think that it's going to exert an influence that is strengthened because it's, aligned with that. And so this is great for your money-making abilities. And I would just say in general, even receiving money in some form, maybe as a gift or anything. I know that might be more eighth house, but I think that the second house can be like a money magnet house in general. So Mercury is retrograding in this house, and there may be things that you're rethinking. Maybe you have wanted to make a big ticket expenditure, and being the typical Capricorn are like, uh-oh, I'm not sure I want to do this. And when Venus comes into that house on the 1st, you may start to soften up to the idea because you might be getting more money, and then you realize, hey, I can't afford this. Even though you probably could have afforded it before that, but you were being very conservative about the situation. And on the 11th, there's a new moon at 23 degrees of Aquarius, so there could be new beginnings in terms of the money that you are earning. Venus in the second house can also be like a raise at work. So if there's a new moon here, I suppose it's possible that you're taking on a new position, maybe within the same company, or starting something on the side, or starting like maybe a part-time job to supplement your income. I mean, that's always a possibility. On the 18th, we have the sun going into Pisces, which is a harmonious angle to you. It's a sextile. And this is the third house for you, Capricorn, the house of teaching and learning, but practical, mundane things that give people skills, not abstract knowledge like the 9th house. So this is also elementary school. If you're an elementary school teacher, Perhaps this is a new job for you or something like that. So the other thing that this house represents is writing and other forms of communication. So this may be featured into February. I mean into March. This kind of these kinds of activities. The third house are your siblings or your aunts and uncles. I think cousins also fall into this house. I specifically focus on siblings because they tend to be the closest to you. Of course, some people's cousins are like their siblings, so I guess in that sense, you would hold them in very high esteem as part of your inner circle or your close family members, if that's the case. But anyway, so you might be more involved with these people in your life. On the 20th, Mercury turns direct in Aquarius. So something gets resolved that is connected to maybe a contract. Maybe this was like a salary negotiation with Venus here and then Mercury at the same time retrograde. I would say too that things can really settle down by March 13th when Mercury comes out of its shadow. But anything, if you were rethinking an expenditure, all of these things, you might have done research and what have you about whether or not you really need something. On the 25th, Venus goes into Pisces, into that third house. Are you doing online dating? The third house can be anything, any means that we communicate with one another, including the internet. This can be receiving money from writing or some kind of media project or teaching. If you've started doing tutoring, it could be something like that. Venus in the third house can be favorable for relationships with siblings and extended family members. There's a harmony going on with them, or even monetary gain through them. On the 27th, the full moon is at 8 degrees of Virgo. Again, another harmonious angle, a sextile as well, but from the opposite direction. So in this particular case, Capricorn, we're looking at the 11th house. That doesn't sound right, does it? No, I mean, actually, duh, no, scratch that. This is different than Pisces, because I was just thinking in terms of them being opposite signs. I wasn't thinking straight. It's actually a trine. It's still a favorable angle, but it's a trine, and it's coming from the 9th house, although some of you will have this full moon in the 8th house because it's going to be particularly for those people who are 0 to 8 degrees of Virgo. You will have this in that 9th house, I'm thinking. I don't like to say anything exact because unless I'm actually looking at a chart, it's a bit tricky to say that, but I can say in general, this will affect your 9th house. Boy, it seems weird. I'm trying to, I'm not looking at a chart. I'm just doing it in my head, and it just seems weird to me to even say that. But that is, so for those of you who are earlier degrees, this might be in the form of being able to gain some insight into the direction you want to go in. Because remember the progression in the 10th house, we're talking about your career aspirations. And so in order to get to that point, each of these houses kind of builds on the other in a certain sense. I mean, they stand alone, but they also are progressions. And actually for the later degree ones, the ones that are born after, what degree did I say that was? This is 8 degrees of Capricorn. If this is in your eighth house, this is going to be also about some of both of the eighth and ninth houses can be spiritual matters. But spiritual matters affect us in the physical dimension. And therefore, whatever it is that we strive to become, we're looking at the bigger picture in the ninth house. In the eighth house, we're looking within ourselves. Okay, and so it's a water house. It's very emotional, but Virgo is the sign of this moon, so that Virgo is practical, and it wants to do constructive things. So it's taking that shadow material that the eighth house represents, those uncomfortable emotions, and I feel that the eighth house is a house of alchemy, that it can help you to become much more in tune with yourself in all aspects of yourself. So, Capricorn is a dry sign in and of itself. You think about Earth, Earth is dry. And so if it doesn't have moisture, it's going to have a lot of, it doesn't have that emotion, that juice, And that's good sometimes because people that are very emotional, they can drown in all that water. So unless you have a lot of if you have Pisces, Moon, or Cancer, Scorpio, and maybe a rising sign and inner planets in Pisces or something like that, it's going to be hard for you to necessarily feel things at that level. You have to kind of train yourself and remind yourself not to just kind of spiritually bypass all the time and try to become more, sometimes people, they just want to do things that are tangible. And, a full moon in the eighth house brings all these ghosts or demons to the surface to be released, or these obsessions. And it's also the house of death, the eighth house, and the full moon can be endings, but death meaning transformation, doesn't have to be the physical death of anybody. But so it's very interesting. It's very transformational, a full moon in the eighth house for sure. So that's going on for you, and that's very dramatic, dramatic ending to the month for some of you. But either way, this can be a time of envisioning, especially for those who have it in the ninth house of what are your core values, and, what is your life philosophy, and how can that inform what you do? Capricorns tend to be ambitious in that classic sense of the word. And yet, does that get you anywhere ultimately? Do you feel that you're emphasizing that too much in your life to the expense of your relationships? The expense, the full moon is very emotional, brings up these ties. And with the eighth house, this is about intimacy with others. So these kinds of issues of, am I, and it's very interesting that it's happening in Virgo, because Virgo rules the sixth house of work. And so work is so much a connection with Capricorn, that you identify so much with what you do and things like that, that you can forget that you are a holistic being and you have so much more than that. Does your inner child come out to play? Do you have strong connections with your loved ones, your children? People have children, and then if they're so busy working, do they get a chance to really enjoy their children? And of course, if people have to, they're just barely making it, that's one thing. You're just doing it for survival. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who are very ambitious. What what is the meaning of that ambition? Is it to make yourself feel like you're okay, to impress other people, or is it really to serve other people? And there are other people besides your clients or your your boss, in your life. There are your children, there's your spouse, your community, and this is something that maybe you're becoming aware of, and that's another thing with the full moon. Okay, I think that I covered it, so I hope that resonated with you. If you would like a private reading, I'm promoting a new combination reading where I just extend my natal chart interpretation with it's like a double reading for a special price with the transits of 2021, just to give people a deeper dive, and that's the name of it. And I have the whole enchilada, which is another combination reading with the tarot. So, I've got different types of readings, astrology readings. I also do tarot readings. You can check me out at rainamoon.astrology.com, and the link is below. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.